Well, a lot of people have gotten all stressed out about that stress. And there are some pretty dire consequences that go with it. We eliminated that, didn't we? That's good. Yeah. So I'd like to do with you a thing that says you can relieve the stress, and you can lead a very fulfilling life in this world. Now let me start with the definition. Dr. Carruthers, back several years ago, wrote an article in which he said, this is the definition of stress. It is a force which acts on the body and sets up strains within it, according to how you react. Whether you're rigid or flexible in your attitude. Look at it like this. If you apply stress to a rigid structure, an iron rod for example, it will eventually snap. If you apply the same amount of stress to a flexible structure, such as a piece of rubber, it'll just bend and the strain won't build up. So stress is a force that's acting upon our bodies. What the effect will be depends almost entirely upon your attitude about it. As Dr. Carruthers says, the golden rule is that stress is bad for you if you're not enjoying it. It's not the stress itself, but how you handle it that is important. Now, I'm going to use not only Dr. Carruthers this morning, but I'm going to use some information from Dr. Herbert Benson, who developed this thing called the, I don't know what he calls it. Relaxation response, yes. Okay? So if you take that, you look at Carruthers, and he's developed something he called autogenics. And he says that basically autogenics is a way of modifying your reaction to stress, stress-proofing yourself by a process similar to meditation. We've heard that word before, haven't we? Yes. It's a way of directing our attention inward to calm, pleasant sensations, heaviness and warmth, for example. You begin by focusing on one limb, gradually moving onto your heartbeat and breathing. And he also stresses, no pun intended, the importance of reasonable exercise and proper diet. He was over in England, and it's the stuff he got, which he called chemo-feedback, isn't available over here, but in the meantime he says, you folks over here, don't wait until you feel stressed. Make sure you find time to switch off and relax for a few minutes a day. Do something you enjoy. Or try this exercise. Sit comfortably in an armchair, close your eyes, and concentrate on your breathing. Just breathe naturally, don't force it, simply focus on it. How many times have we heard that's the way you begin your meditation? But it's called autogenics in this case. Well, the more we read the scientific literature, the more we see the similarity between the conclusions that many of these separate researchers have come to. Whatever else they may differ on, the key factor in the thesis is that your greatest protection against harmful stress and the greatest cure for the effects of stress lies within your mind, your own mind. Your mind can make you stress-proof in spite of the fact that you have grave responsibilities, that you have money to earn, you have relationships to carry out. And there seems to be very little doubt that rest and relaxation are essential to stress relief. There's a wonderful example in the life of Jesus. It's recorded in the book of Mark, and it's in the 6th chapter. And we'll begin reading at the 7th verse. And he called to him the 12 and began to send them out 2 by 2 and gave them authority over the unclean spirits. He charged them to take nothing for their journey except a staff, no bread, no bag, no money in their belts, but to wear sandals and not put on 2 tunics. And he said to them, where you enter a house, stay there until you leave the place. And if any place will not receive you and they refuse to hear you, when you leave, shake off the dust that's on your feet for a testimony against them. So they went out and preached that men should repent, and they would cast out many demons and anointed with oil many that were sick and healed them. And then skipping a few verses, we go to the verse 30. The apostles returned to Jesus and told him all that they had done and taught. And he said to them, come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while. For many were coming and going, and they had no leisure even to eat. And they went away in a boat to a lonely place by themselves. Now, most of you are going to recognize that this is the introduction to what many people consider the greatest miracle of Jesus, the feeding of the 5,000. Go read it for yourself. It's in Mark. At any rate, it's clear that Jesus knew the value of rest and recharging your battery so that you can have full power. Jesus' teachings, meditations, response, all of these, whatever way you want to give a name to them, all of them contain within themselves the call to rest a while. Maybe that's why we have the Sabbath. It's a time to rest a while. So, let's say you spend an hour a day in meditation, that'd be quite a bit. Combined with a good night's sleep would mean you'd get, say, maybe 8 or 9 hours of rest a day. But that's not all you need. Sleep is not the only stress relief that you have. This other relief goes on in that other 15 or 16 hours that you have every day. Now, some folks will tell you that that's the time that they use to avoid or keep from having stress. That led some people to the monastic life, you know. You know, those people that say, well, if you don't come into contact with people, you won't have any stress in relationships. And so you keep to yourself and you avoid any change, and in so doing, you don't have any stress because nothing changes. All of you that believe that, show me both hands. Just a cursory look will convince you that life is meant to have stress, because there is constant change in everybody's life. There are constant challenges in relationships, and people around you die, institutions move to new locations. Some folks even change their names. Your own body is a constant dynamo of change. And by the way, your body is in constant need of attention. How many of you go more than 3 days without eating? Or a day without drinking something? Not many. Constant need. That you need fluid to drink and bodily contact with loved ones. You need to be able to cope with too much or too little weight, or too much or too little growth. Lots of things that go with it. So change is our nature. It is the nature of all nature to change. How many of you have seen the first budding of the trees after being dead all winter long? It's getting to be very beautiful out there. Yeah. Even the fig trees have things on them. All change is a result of some force acting upon something. And the nearest anyone comes to being at rest is to be in what would be called a state of equilibrium. Energy, even then, is constantly being changed from one form to another with the resulting activity that it brings. So as a result, people, whether they admit it or not, have a constant need to transform the energy of their lives into various forms. So every person will act in one way or another. And it's axiomatic that that if you have the actions of other people acting upon you, then there's probably going to be some stress involved. What happens in my world demands or stresses upon my body and mind determines how I'm going to feel. Now, for most of those things, those changes, the body has an automatic system. We call it the autonomic system. Oh, yeah, you have a regular response. When you eat, the body automatically provides just enough acid to digest the food and put it into the bloodstream and let it do its good thing. And then after a while, no longer needing some of that stuff, we eliminate it. And if it gets too hot, your body's going to generate sweat. If it gets too cold, your body's going to shiver to get some warmth. If your body is threatened, it's going to bring about that fight or flight response. You see, the body is the most wonderful device in the world. It does so many things on its own to protect, satisfy, relieve, grow, and heal itself. But then comes the rub. When the body responds to a demand and takes care of the challenge, then that's the time when the body should return back to its normal state. As we humans were originally made, that's what would happen. Demand system would be made, the body would respond, and when the need for the response was over, the body would return to normal. And normal, in the original thing, was perfect health and emotional equilibrium. Perfect health and equilibrium? That sounds rather unattainable, doesn't it, in this mad world in which we live. But it's the way God made us, actually. Because you see, we were made in the image and likeness of God. So why aren't we always going back to that? Remember the definition of stress. It's a force that acts upon the body and sets up strains within it according to how you react. According to how you react. If you're flexible, like a piece of rubber hose, you readjust to normal conditions just as soon as that stress lets up. If you're rigid in your attitude, there's no readjustment that's going to take place. In other words, your body doesn't return to that normal state. You stay in this state where the stress pushed you. So you live in a sustained state of stress rather than equilibrium. Now, for the rigid person, this stress moves into every area of your body, mind, or emotion into a new position. And that position may hurt. It may even immobilize you, but it soon becomes your new norm. Not your God-given norm, but your stress norm. Now, strangely enough, this stress factor may either be pleasant or unpleasant. Or if afterwards the body is impeded from readjusting to your God-given norm, then you're going to continue to live in this strained condition from then on. Think of that iron rod that Dr. Brothers used. In the beginning, a rod was straight. Then somebody comes along and tries to bend it. And because it's a rigid structure, any bend you put in it is going to stay that way even after you put it down. So any stress placed upon the iron rod tends to stay in that form. And then if you bend it even more and more, eventually that rod is just simply going to break. So no matter how long you let the iron rod rest between bends, it never readjusts to its straight state. It stays in a state of strain. And each new stress strains it even more until finally it breaks. It does that unless there's an intervention which changes the state of the strain. One way would be to bend it back towards straight to remove some of the strain. Another way would be to beat it with a hammer to get it back straight. Another way would be to melt it again and form it without stress in the mold. But think about this, bending it back towards straight in reality is just going to put a new strain on it. Beating it with a hammer is okay, but who wants to take a beating to get back in shape? That's a joke. Oh, melting works fine. But when it's straight and true again, it's still subject to the same stresses that got it into the bent condition in the first place. Now, most of us have some permanent stress points in our body right now. And they're holdovers from some past stress that you experienced. We have tension. Life may be hard. You may have that tight ball in the pit of your stomach. There may be pain that's hard on you. And every bit of that is symptomatic of a hard attitude, a rigid attitude, in at least one part of your life. It's a kind of philosophy that says, I must keep every event of my life as a scar or a beauty mark. Either way, I let myself harden into the strained condition, and pretty soon it's the only normalcy that I know. Pretty soon I may forget what it felt like to be flexible, feel good, unthreatened, whole. I become convinced that the way I am is the way I am. The way all people have the same misfortunes that I have are. They're going to stay that way too. And that's why Carruthers said the golden rule is that stress is bad for you if you're not enjoying. Remember, it's not the stress. It is the strained condition that remains after the cause of the stress has ceased. It's whether or not the body is able to readjust itself to the God-given normal state. So if you're not enjoying your stress, it means that the readjustment simply is not taking place. Now, there are all kinds of reasons for this. Perhaps you've had an illness of some kind, and the body hasn't produced enough defensive stuff fast enough. And so you've got a scar there, an organic weakness. Perhaps the stress is great fear that's implanted in you in the mind, and that fear is always near to you, and you're always guarded and guided by it. The body alert system, in that case, is permanently turned on. Perhaps the stress is the death of a loved one, and the sense of loss is so great that the body grieving system just simply can't be turned off. Perhaps the stress is a great joy, which comes from some accomplishment you've made. And you felt that joy once, and it sort of died out. And so your mind and your heart go ceaselessly in search of the same place for the same joy. But you can't ever find that same joy again. And so the calm of your life is given up in a search for joy. That's an oxymoron, isn't it? So you see, it's all very confusing. It's complicated. So I'd like to get it down to some kind of workable level. Let's say you feel normal right now. Normal to you might be a certain amount of pain. It might even be a sense of unworthiness. It could be bitterness over some loss. Or it may be that you just simply don't have enough money to meet your obligations. Now, it's easy to see that that sort of normal is not really good. It's a mixture of good and not so good, like pleasure and pain. So let's suppose for a moment that your normal is not what God intends for you at all. Let's suppose that God made you so that you would have access to plenty all of the time. Let's suppose that you really are a child of God and should feel worthy all of the time. It should be that you feel that God provided mind power to overcome any attack upon the body by bringing it back to perfect health. And that there never should be anything called a loss, because there can be no separation in spirit with anyone or anything. Don't just suppose. Know that that's the truth. It is your God-given normal state. The fact that you're not realizing it is merely because you have adopted some rigid attitudes, and it makes it impossible for your body or mind or consciousness to readjust after the stress is placed upon it. See, stresses come and go, but the effects very often remain. But most of us believe that we're already normal, that we don't need to readjust for whatever reason, whether it be for perfect health, happiness, or plenty. So why should I want to soften my attitude so that I can hope that it's going to return to something called true normal? Ever hear of a thing called an affirmation? Everybody? You've heard of an affirmation? In a real way, we can say that the affirmation process is the most direct route to readjustment to God-given normalcy and to reprogramming of those old rigid attitudes into non-resisting, flexible attitudes. An affirmation is a process through which you tell yourself the truth about yourself. You visualize yourself in the process of living the truth about you. And you experience the effects of the return to your God-given normalcy, which is perfect health, prosperity, compassion, peace of mind, and amazing creativity and productivity. The same thing about affirmation projects is that it works to remove strains of many years standing, and it provides stress proofing for now and the future. And I can tell you from our personal experience with Margaret and me that these things really do work. If you haven't tried them, well, you ought to. And affirmations can be used at any time. They can be used in your meditation, they can be used in your prayer, they can be used in the busiest moment of your life, and you can use them particularly when there's some kind of contrary stressing force that's beginning to work on you. So with that, let me give you an assignment for this coming week. This assignment is going to come from Dr. Herbert Benson. It's going to be what he calls the relaxation response, but you're going to recognize it as being meditation or something similar to it. So step one in this process is to pick a focus phrase that firmly is rooted in your belief system. You really believe that phrase. The phrase that I would suggest for you this morning is come rest a while. Come rest a while. To be truly at rest means to be in a state of equilibrium without strain. And that state is important, and it was important to Jesus. He desired it for his disciples. And by the way, we are disciples of the Christ. So come rest a while. Now, the second step is to sit quietly in a comfortable position. The third step is to close your eyes. The fourth is to relax your muscles. The fifth is to breathe slowly and naturally. And as you do, repeat your focus word or phrase as you exhale, or if it's more comfortable, as you inhale. Step 6, assume a passive attitude. That means don't worry about what you're doing. And if other thoughts come to your mind, simply say to yourself, oh well, and gently return to the repetition. Step 7 is to continue for a few moments. 10 to 20 is not too much. And step 8 is practice this technique once or twice every day. Now that's pretty much meditation, isn't it? There are millions of ways to do meditation, but that's one good one. Now, after the meditation is over, you want to add a few moments of positive reflection about the goals that you have made for yourself and for your life. Now, make sure that these goals are outer attainments that help you express your objective, your true objective, which is peace, and love, and prosperity, and faith. The outer thing must correspond to the inner, not the reverse. So to strengthen your goal focus, devise affirmations that say in words the truth about your true self. Use them at any time you feel like doing it. The affirmation, as you recall, must be first person, positive, active, and present tense. Perhaps you would want to say, I am joyously expressing my love through serving as, and you add your own word, whatever it is you're serving as. Lawyer, stenographer, housewife, mother, father, whatever it is you're serving as. I joyously express my love through serving as this right now. Right now. And then see yourself doing that service with effortless ease. Just keep on that relaxed state. Be that rubber band that stretches and comes back to perfect position each time. Just let it happen. Feel yourself free and able to go with the flow no matter what the outer circumstances. And give thanks to God for this wonderful return to God-given normalcy. You see, folks, God wants you to have relief from past stress. God wants you to be stress-proofed for now and for the future. I hope I have given you that opportunity this very morning to take advantage of, so that you can let that truth be in you that makes you truly free. I think if you wanted to say it in another way, you would say this: God, I accept and joyfully express Christ's gift to me of infinite perfection. Think on it. Feel on it. Express it, live it, and be as God intends you to be in equilibrium. Bless you all.